Hey there boys and girls, Lucky here and welcome back to another CSGO video. Today with part 3 of our mouse sensitivity guide. Yay! So if you haven't watched any of the other episodes, I would highly recommend you guys to pause this video right now and go and watch the other two videos. Because the first one is talking about all the technical aspects, so setting up the drivers correctly and having like the no mouse axle, the right DPI, what's your real DPI value, and also your real sensitivity and all that stuff. The second episode is about beginner mistakes, especially if you're coming from another game like, I don't know, for example, Call of Duty or Battlefield, and you just wanna like play CS now. You might do or have some mistakes that you're not quite aware of, so make sure to watch this episode first and then come back here. But now let's talk about part 3, where we will be explaining the sensitivities, and for that we will be going to double doors right here, if you're coming down mid. And you might have a couple, like let's say you're an entry fragger, and there are a couple of like spots where enemies might be hiding, like this and that. Usually there's a guy back here, maybe also there, and let's say there, just to get an example going here. So, as an entry fragger, when we're talking about a higher sensitivity, you want to be able to get into a site. Of course it's not a site, but it's an example. You want to get in and clear the angles to left and right as quickly as possible, while still being somewhat accurate. Of course, a higher sensitivity is better for that, because with a high sensitivity you can like check this guy, come in here, kill this guy, and turn around 180 and kill those guys. You're just a lot faster when it comes, and also effective when it comes to entering a site and clearing all the angles. The thing is now, of course, because that's the pro side of a high sensitivity, if we're going to long right here, and again, before we do that, let's say we have a couple of friends, again, maybe here, and let's put someone there. If you have a high sensitivity, you might be a little bit twitchy at long ranges, because you cannot like move your mouse quite as much to like have a good mouse to crosshair ratio when it comes to a very long distance like this one right here. Like look, the enemies aren't even like at the height of my crosshair anymore. They're basically smaller right now. So that's the negative side of a high sensitivity, and also of course the positive side of a lower sensitivity, because if you have a low sensitivity, you're perfectly suited for stuff like this, just shooting people at long and trying to kill them. Because you can move your mouse quite a bit, and because your crosshair or your crosshair isn't as sensitive, you can like really have the precise pixel aim and get those really nice headshots, especially at long range. However, of course, if we go back to our other example, when you want to enter a site and you maybe are only able to do a 120 through like a whole mousepad swipe or something like that, you can maybe check this guy and this guy, but you will miss that guy back there and these two. So a really low sensitivity might not be quite as good for someone like an entry fragger, but it's very good for someone who's trying to play long range scenarios like this one, for example. Of course, you can also go with something like a balanced sensitivity, which is basically the medium, not the best, but the medium of both worlds, because you're not quite as good when it comes to entering the sites. You might be able to do this and that instead of just this and that. And you might not be quite as good when it comes to shooting like guys long range like this. But you're still better than having either of those to the extreme, and it makes you a little bit more of a versatile player. So again, you really have to kind of think about like what's your role and what you think, or what the thing is that you usually do, and how that would help you. Now let's talk a little bit about on versus wrist movement, and for that we'll go to the same spot everyone is always going to and does too, which would be this wall right here. And again, let's put a couple of friendlies down here. Hello friends. The thing is now, when I move my hand or my wrist, this is what I can cover, approximately. So I'm pretty much able to do something like this and check the heads for those two guys and just shoot them. Again, I'm not warmed up, but you get what I mean. And when I move my arm, it's basically to look around. So the hand-wrist movement is basically your aiming, and the arm movement is basically your looking around. You're moving your sensitivity, I guess, if you get what I mean. Probably you do. But yeah, so you have to keep this in mind, because it's kind of important. Also, again, a flick shot would be a combination of both, where you have to like swipe across and also adjust a little bit with your hand then, because of course that's possible. But again, you shouldn't be caught off guard and try to flick to someone like there. Of course, again, it's possible, but in a perfect scenario, you just want to wait for the enemy, and boom, he's dead. So now, there are also different methods of grabbing or gripping your mouse. I myself am a palm grip user, like most of the people. Like I think 50 or 60% of every player is palm grip or something like that. So what I do is I put my hand on my mouse completely, and like all my fingers and my palm, they're just completely touching the mouse. This sensitivity, or better, this style of gripping the mouse is better for like slower movements, also a little bit more accurate movements. There's also something called a, now don't let me confuse those, there's a claw grip and a fingertip grip. The claw grip is basically also putting your palm on your mouse, but then angling your fingers so that you kind of like pointing down from above on top of them. So if that would be a mouse, your fingers would be going like this, and then they would come down like that instead of resting like this with the palm grip. And then there's also a fingertip grip, which is basically another variant, which is just holding the mouse with your fingers and not having anything of your palm back here resting on the mouse. So again, those are kind of like the grips are a little bit more suited for different scenarios. For example, the palm grip, as I already said, is better for slower kind of long range scenarios, while a fingertip grip is better to quickly move your mouse around and have like a entry fragger high sensitivity kind of playstyle. So again, you basically want to look at how you're holding your mouse and also take this into consideration when you're trying to define or find your sensitivity, because it definitely does make a difference the way you're holding your mouse. Even though most players are palm grip users, don't force yourself to have a certain grip style. Just hold the mouse how you're comfortable with it, because it doesn't help anything if you're just like hurting your hand or are uncomfortable while playing. So yeah, last but not least, I want to talk about sensitivity limits, and I run into this a lot. So even though my sensitivity is kind of a balanced one, not quite super high, but not super low, I run into the problem of this. Like, I do a complete mousepad swipe for a 360, which is 450 millimeters, or 45 centimeters, so approximately half a meter. However, I also have part of my keyboard hanging on my mousepad. This means if I have to aim up a little and go there, I'm getting stuck. I don't know if you can hear that, like in the microphone right now. That's me hitting my mouse against the keyboard. That's one of the sensitivity limits that you have, is basically running out of mousepad space or hitting stuff around you. So this is a very basic tip, but just make sure nothing's in the way of your mousepad, and if you're running out of mousepad space, make sure to readjust. Yep, that's already it for the last point. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this little video. Stay tuned for the fourth part, because in that one we will be talking about how to find your actual sensitivity by tracking targets while moving, while standing, snapping to them, and all that good stuff. But yeah, once again, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, feel free to leave a like or something like that, I don't know, or just a funny comment, tell a joke if you're up to it. But yeah, Lucky Skill Faker out.